Hello everyone, welcome back to another video here on the channel. Today we are going to be doing a little bit of a recap on some NBA games on the day of the December 22nd, so a day previous to when you guys will be watching this, and a few of my takeaways from some of the games. And so, starting right off with Trae Young versus Ja Morant, the battle of the young point guards. And let me just tell you, man, Ja Morant and Trae Young have both looked dominant to start the season. Trae Young with 36-9, Ja Morant with 28-7 on the night. This Atlanta Hawks team looks dangerous, and this Memphis Grizzlies team could also be good. It's also dependent on when Jaren Jackson Jr. comes back, and so I think it's more likely that this team starts to think about the playoffs next season. Another year development of Ja Morant and Jaren Jackson is back. But this team has a lot to like, and I think this Atlanta team is definitely a team that we have to consider making a push for the playoffs. Moving along to the Oklahoma City Thunder and the Charlotte Hornets game. The Hornets now fall to 0-2. They do not have a heroic shooting night from Terry Rozier tonight. And Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who had 24, 7, and 9, ends up hitting the game winner for them and giving OKC the win. Outside of that, we saw Lou Dort put up 15 points. He's still not shooting from three-point range the way he was in the bubble, but we shouldn't be overly surprised from that. George Hill also putting up 21 for that OKC team as well. And then, we saw Terry Rozier put up 19 points. So still a good game, but only 2 of 7 from deep last night. Gordon Hayward only had 12 points himself and was 0 of 5 from deep. And Devontae Graham was only 4 of 16 from the field. LaMelo Ball, however, had 13 points on 50% shooting and 50% from deep, so he had a much better game in his second game in the league. With P.J. Washington having a good rebound night as well with 18 points. Moving along to Cleveland versus Pistons. The Pistons' new signing, Jeremy Grant, looking like he might actually be able to do something on the offensive end. Nonetheless, it was a game in which they lost to the Cleveland Cavaliers 128-119. This young backcourt of the Cleveland Cavaliers is looking good. My question regarding this Cleveland Cavaliers team this season was who's going to be the playmaker? Which one of those two is going to be the creator, the guy who's racking up the assists and creating for the rest of the team? And last night, Darius Garland showed it. He had 12 assists while putting up also 21 points. And Colin Sexton had 32 points. Garland had 23 and 10, and Love added 23 and 16. While Kevin Love had 15 and 9, coming back from injury. Isaac Okoro had nothing. He only took 3 shots. But here's the interesting thing about this Cleveland team. For a team that isn't really competing for the playoffs, they didn't go deep into their bench, and they played the starters heavy minutes. Garland played 44, Sexton played 45, Garland played 44, Love played 37.5, his first game back from injury, and Okoro in his second game in the NBA nearly played 42. That's a lot of minutes to be playing against not even a good team. A game against Detroit, which is games Cleveland's need to be winning. But need to be winning for what? Maybe Cleveland squeak into the 10 seed and get into the playoffs, but that's going to be an uphill battle for them. I mean, if Sexton keeps putting up 25 or 30 a night, then maybe. What's Kevin Love, Andre Drummond, Darius Garland? Maybe as a team we need to put some respect on that can make the push to that 10 seed. But that's all they're going to do, and it's just they're losing the playing games, they're losing the first round to one of the top seeds. And that's it. So I think they need to be a little bit more careful with these guys. We'll have to keep an eye on this trend and see if these guys continue to play 40-plus minutes a night. Because obviously you want to get your young guys playing time to develop, but you also don't want to burn them out and risk injury as well. But moving on to Jeremy Grant, he had 28 points last night on 64% shooting, 4 of 8 from deep. Blake Griffin himself had 26 points on 8 of 16 shooting from deep. So Blake Griffin had himself a good night. Trying to get himself back off of his injury. DeLon Wright also had 19 points for this team. That's the first time DeLon Wright's really had a starting role his whole career. And maybe he impresses. His perimeter defense with his length is very good for the guard position. But 2 of 3 from deep last night with 19 points, 6 rebounds, and 4 assists. There's some positive signs on this team. Killian Hayes only had 3 points in his second game, shooting 1 of 7. But hopefully we can continue to see improvement from him. The Magic beat the Wizards 130-120, and all I have to say is this. Nikola Vucevic had 22 points and 17 rebounds with a very dominant performance, and then a lot of good depth scoring for the rest of the team. Bradley Beal balled out again with 39 points. He has been an absolute scoring machine this season, as he always is. Russell Westbrook got another triple-double but is hucking up too many shots and not hitting those shots. And he called himself out at the end of the game and says he needs to improve. But if he can improve, then this team could be scary. Well, I will say that. Davis Bertans also struggled last night, shooting 2 of 7 from 3. But nonetheless, this Wizards team has a lot of potential if Bradley Beal can continue to score this way. But the thing is for this team is that Bradley Beal and Russell Westbrook and Davis Bertans probably have to be on their game every night for this team to win. And when they're not all on, I don't know if this team's good enough to beat most teams in the league, because then you're not much different than last year where Bradley Beal had to carry them. So that's not too much of a different dynamic there. Moving along, the 76ers beat the Knicks. I'm loving this new Joel Embiid role. He's getting lots of touches. He's getting lots of touches down in the block in the paint. Finished off with 27 points last night, 50% from the field, 50% from deep. Only took 4 threes. I don't think he should be taking any more than that. I want him down in the paint. That's where he's best. Seth Curry also played a very good game last night, getting 17 points for them. Shake Milton off the bench again had 10. And I mean, this Knicks team, now you saw RJ Barrett have a really good game, game 1, and now have an abysmal game last night, shooting 2 of 15 from the field. So hopefully he can bounce back from that. But it looked promising for him after game 1, and then game 2 he just flopped. Julius Randle had 25 points himself on 11 of 15 shooting. And hopefully for that Knicks team, RJ Barrett can bounce back. Next up, Pacers beat the Bulls 125 to 106. Where Lauri Markkanen led the Bulls with only 16 points and 9 rebounds. It was a tough scoring night from the Chicago Bulls. And with that being said, they also had 20 turnovers, which does not help. Patrick Williams had 4 and Kobe White had 4. Kobe White's struggling to adjust to that new power forward starting point guard position. Only had 3 assists, had 4 turnovers, 12 points, and only shooting 40% from the field. However, was 4 of 7 from deep. Patrick Williams is looking decent so far. 9 points, 2 of 6 from the field. Nothing special, nothing terrible. And then Zach LaVine only had 17 himself on 6 of 13 shooting. Thomas Satoransky back tonight and also had 3 turnovers. You would have hoped he would have been able to stabilize and have less turnovers coming in and helping to support Kobe White, but it didn't work out that way. And that being said, there's 2 key points I want to make about Indiana. Sabonis had another dominant performance last night. 8 of 11 from the field, 0 of 1 from 3, but that's... If he, like I mentioned earlier, if he starts to hit the threes, then watch out. But if he doesn't, Sabonis is still so dominant. He had 10 rebounds, 11 assists, so he's showing an even more improved ability to pass the ball on top of what he already had at 22 points. If he can start putting up a 20, 10 and 8, 20, 10 and 7 stat line, then look out. On top of the fact that it looks like Oladipo might have finally found his shooting touch again, and we might be starting to see old All-NBA Victor Oladipo. He's still been good on the defensive end. Not quite as elite as he was, but still very good. Had 22 points last night, 7 rebounds, and only 1 assist. But shooting 67% from the field on those 22 points while shooting 5 of 5 from deep. If you have All-NBA Victor Oladipo back, if you have All-Star Domantas Sabonis, and then you have Malcolm Brogdon, and then you have T.J. Warren, who had 22 points last night. He's a very good shooter. You have Miles Turner, who can protect the paint and get rebounds for you. Then off the bench, you have Justin Holiday, you have Aaron Holiday, you have Doug McDermott, T.J. McConnell. This is a scary team, man. There's been some people that haven't been putting credit on this Indiana Pacers team that have been saying they might not even be a playoff team. I'd look out, man. If they keep playing like this, I wouldn't be surprised if they finish above the Raptors. I wouldn't be surprised if they finish ahead of a few other of those top teams in the East, because that is a very good team, a very deep team, and a team with a couple of leaders, one in the paint, one in the perimeter. Malcolm Brogdon, a near All-Star as well last season, and a few other really good scorers around them. So there's a lot to like. Moving along to the Raptors that are now 0-2, and their worst record in terms of a losing record since the 2012 season speaks to how well they've been and how consistent they've been for a long time now. The game in which Siakam had 16, 15, and 8, nearly a career high in assists for him, and he does look to be creating a lot more this season and setting up other teammates, which is a good sign because he attracts so much attention when he goes to the rim. If he can improve that passing ability, that's going to be the next step to his game. But with that being said, the only other player on the team on the night, as far as the starters go, that were able to be very dominant offensively was just Fred VanVleet, who had 27 points on 50% shooting. And OG Anunoby didn't shoot the ball great again. He only had 6 attempts. OG Anunoby needs to get involved more offensively than that this season, in my opinion, and it was 2 of 5 from deep. But the biggest thing for me has been the contributions of the centers. They've been very good so far to start the season. Obviously, they lost Serge Gasol, Serge Ibaka, and Marc Gasol in the offseason, and they brought in Aaron Baines to be the starting center. He was 6 of 11 on the night. He was 1 of 4 from deep, which isn't great. But he had 7 rebounds, had 13 points. He had a good game. And he also had Chris Boucher come off the bench. And Chris Boucher got an extension, or got re-signed in the offseason. Wasn't sure what his role was going to be, if he was going to be a power forward, if he was going to be a center, if he was going to start. But he came in off the bench last night and played 28 minutes. Aaron Baines only playing 20. So those guys have racked up all 48 minutes at the center position combined. And Chris Boucher saw himself get 22 points. 3 of 4 from deep, 9 of 13 from the field, a very efficient 24 points, while also getting 10 rebounds and 7 blocks to go along with that. The length of Chris Boucher has been dominant. He might not be the biggest guy, but he has extreme length, and that has definitely helped. Matt Thomas also had 8 points off the bench as well last night. But DeMar DeRozan came to play. He had 27 points. He hit 3 threes in the game, half of the amount of threes he hit last season. And Patty Mills couldn't miss on the night. It was 8 of 9 from the field, 5 of 6 from deep, and put up 21 points of his own. And the Spurs were able to move to 2-0. Continuing on, the Timberwolves were able to beat the Jazz 116 to 111. The Jazz just couldn't shoot it well enough early on in the night. Donovan Mitchell was 6 of 23. Mike Conley was 6 of 13, and Bogdan Bogdanovic was 3 of 16. Jordan Clarkson only 8 of 17 off the bench as well for 23 points. And it just they weren't able to overcome it by the end of the game, while also having 18 turnovers to the 9 of the Minnesota Timberwolves, and that was the difference for them. Jake Layman started and didn't shoot and only played 13.5 minutes. But then Jarrett Culver had 14 off the bench. Carson Edwards in the second game in the league shot 8 of 12 from the field, putting up 18 points while hitting 2 of his 3 attempted threes. Naz Reid came in and got 8 points as well, while he shot 2 of 4 from deep. And then D'Angelo Russell had 25 points himself. Malik Beasley had 18. Karl-Anthony Towns had 16 while putting up 12 boards. And this team was just the better team on the night, and were able to come away with the victory over what most people would have on paper a better Utah Jazz team. Rudy Gobert was able to put up 18 and 17, but the rest of the team struggled too much offensively. On to what you could argue was the game of the night. The Rockets and the Portland Trailblazers. Harden and McCollum had an absolute duel. Harden had 44 points and 17 assists after coming out of quarantine while looking like he was 10 or 15 pounds overweight, and this guy is still dominant. I could only imagine how good Harden would be if he actually applied himself, committed himself to the game of basketball, and trained as hard as some of these other best players in the league do. If he did, I would argue that we'd probably be talking about one of the best players ever to play the game of basketball. But unfortunately for us, he hasn't. JJ McCullough matched him with 44 points of his own and is able to win the game for the Trailblazers 128 to 126 in what was a very, very fun game. Then on to the last game of the night. It was a duel of young guards, De'Aaron Fox versus Devin Booker, with Chris Paul having a say in it as well, as he finished with 22 points and 12 assists. His presence being felt early on in that Phoenix team. DeAndre Ayton got himself some foul trouble and only played 30 minutes, putting up 9 points, but 12 rebounds to go along with it. Jay Crowder had 17 points as well, shooting 3 of 8 from deep. And Devin Booker had 26 points of his own, shooting 7 from deep. And on to the Sacramento team. Marvin Bagley had a good night, he had a great night. He only did play 20 minutes. I know they're just trying to ease him in. He had 13 points on 50% shooting, and 11 rebounds to go along with it. Harrison Barnes also had 11 rebounds of his own, while only shooting 5 of 14 from the field. Buddy Hield also only shot 4 of 14, and those two shooting such poor percentages ultimately was the difference in what ended up being a 3-point game. De'Aaron Fox played very well, shooting 50% from the field and putting up 24 points with 7 assists. And Bialica doing his thing off the bench, putting up 12. Whiteside with 8. Whiteside was a very good acquisition for them as a backup center. And Tyrese Haliburton, he only had 2 points, but he played 26 minutes, was very good defensively, had 5 assists, and let me just tell you this, he is one of the higher IQ, more composed, and much more professional decision-making players I've seen coming out of the draft in recent years. He looked very sound tonight, made smart decisions defensively and offensively, was in the right places, made some very crucial plays that did not come up on the stat sheet tonight for that team. But he made his presence felt and played very well, in my opinion. And so that's my takeaways after the games last night. I hope you guys enjoyed, and thank you guys for watching. And I will see you guys tomorrow for another recap on the games on December 27th. Thanks for watching.